Listen, K-fam. The white flower was still on the counter when he opened that door. IU, 7 days. 7 days on the job. Brooke Bennett, 26 years old. Black American live-in housemaid inside the CO mansion in Seoul. Black dress, white apron. A signature white flower always pinned above her right temple. A storm cracks the sky. A pipe bursts in the servant's wing. The only working bathroom is in the restricted corridor, next to his office. Fresh from the shower, dark robe knotted at the waist, the flower resting on black marble. Then the mirror moves. Seo Ji-hoon, 34, head of the Seo crime family. They call him the Quiet One. Black Korean dragon rising up the left side of his neck. The door is half open behind her. She does not scream. She does not seduce. She sets a rule. Office, camera on, door open, or nothing. By morning, the whole staff is whispering. Vivian the cook smiles too politely. 2 Korean maids sharpen their tongues. Brooke's locker is forced open. Nothing missing. Omo. They were hunting a love token that does not exist. Then a necklace vanishes. Documents disappear from the safe. Every eye turns to the black girl in the white apron. But somebody tampered with that bathroom lock on purpose, and what she does when she finds out. Mark my words, K-fam. Stay close. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Brooke Bennett tightened the knot of the dark bathrobe over her hips and killed the shower valve with her elbow, because her hands were still full of soap, and a woman on day 7, inside the CO mansion, does not touch chrome she has not yet been told she is allowed to touch. The storm outside hammered the roof of the restricted wing in a flat, mean rhythm. She had counted 4 blackouts already since 11. This one was the 5th. The overhead light in the marble bathroom stuttered, held, stuttered again, and then chose to stay. She had not planned to be in this bathroom tonight. She had not planned to be in this corridor. The pipe in the servants' quarters had burst at 10:40, and the head housekeeper, avoiding her eyes the way 3 of them had been avoiding her eyes since Tuesday, had said the words, "Restricted wing, second door on the left, be fast," and turned away before Brooke could ask what fast meant inside a house where every hallway had a camera and every camera fed a room she had never been shown. Fast meant this: wet curls loose over bare shoulders, the white flower she wore above her right temple, resting on the black marble counter, petals open, yellow and red center catching the yellow light, her uniform folded on the small stool by the door. The dark robe knotted twice at the waist, because once had felt like a bet she did not want to take. She wiped the steam from the mirror with the side of her forearm. She saw him, not his face first, his shape. The shape of a tall man in a white shirt with the collar open and no tie, a jacket folded once over his left arm, standing 3 steps inside the doorway she had left half open because the lock had refused her twice, and she had chosen speed over a fight with brass. The dragon on the left side of his neck lifted out of the collar and climbed toward his jaw. Black ink. She had heard the maids in the kitchen name that dragon in a whisper on her second morning, and she had understood then that whispering about it was the whole point of the tattoo. Seo Ji-hoon did not move. The mirror held both of them for the length of one breath. Brooke felt her own pulse count itself against the wet skin of her throat, and she made a decision inside that single beat that would decide the next 7 days of her life. She did not scream. Screaming brought running feet. Running feet brought witnesses. Witnesses brought a story. And a story inside this house had a life of its own by breakfast. She had been in Koreatown 3 months, and inside the Bennett family long enough to know one clean rule her mother had drilled into her, with the wooden spoon and the hand on the shoulder both. When a powerful man walks into a room where you are half-dressed, you do not react to him, you react to the room. She turned. Not fast, not slow. She turned the way a woman turns when she is choosing her angle, and she kept both hands high, palms open, held at collarbone level so the robe stayed exactly where the knot had left it. The flower was still on the counter behind her, safe, out of his sightline. Her damp curls fell forward over one eye, and she left them there because moving them meant lifting an arm, and lifting an arm meant asking the knot at her waist to do work it was not built for. "Sir," her voice came out lower than she wanted, and she was glad. "Step back into the corridor, please." He did not step back. He did not step forward either. His right hand was resting on the jacket over his left forearm, and she saw, very clearly, the outline of a leather holster underneath the fabric of that jacket. She let herself see it. She did not let her eyes stay. "The door was open," he said. His English was clean, almost no accent. The pause between the words told her the accent was there and had been trained down. "The lock's tampered." She said it before her brain finished writing it. Then she watched his face, because a man who tampers with his own lock does not blink at that sentence, and a man who did not tamper with it does. He blinked. Once. Slow. Not the answer, but not a lie either. "You are the new one," he said. Not a question. Brooke Bennett, housemaid, 7 days. She named herself the way you name yourself at a police checkpoint. "I was sent to this wing because the pipe burst in staff quarters. I did not know this bathroom was yours. It is not mine." He watched her the way a man watches a chess piece someone else has moved. "It is the bathroom next to my office." "Then I am sorry for the proximity, sir." Something moved at the very corner of his mouth. It was not a smile. It was the shape a mouth makes when it decides not to smile. Rain slapped the window behind her in a hard sheet, and the overhead light stuttered again, and in that half-second of dimness, she saw him more clearly than she had seen him in the full light. Broad shoulders held military square, a face clean-shaven and tired in the eyes, dark hair pushed back off a fair forehead, and that dragon curling up out of the open collar, like a piece of him that walked ahead of him into every room. She had heard the servants in the kitchen name 3 things about So Ji-hoon in 7 days. He was 34. He was the master of the house. He did not raise his voice, ever, which was why they called him the quiet one, and why the ones who worked for him longest were the ones who feared him most. She was aware of the second door in this bathroom, the one that connected through to the office, and she was aware that she could not see whether it was open or closed from where she was standing. "Sir," she said again, "I am going to ask you 3 things. If you say yes to all 3, I will finish and leave, and by tomorrow, the pipe will be fixed, and you will not see me in this corridor again." He tilted his head. The tilt was permission to continue. 1. She kept her palms where they were. "Step back into the corridor. Not out, just back to the doorway, where the camera in the hall can see you." His eyes went, without moving his head, up and to his left, in the direction the hall camera would be. He knew exactly where it was. Of course he knew. 2. She swallowed. Her throat was dry, in a way that had nothing to do with the steam. "Leave the door where it is now. Half open, not closed. If it closes, I will scream, and I will not care what happens after." The corner of his mouth moved a second time. 3. She lifted her chin, 1 degree. "Whatever business brought you to this corridor at 11 at night, we speak about it in your office tomorrow morning. Door open, camera on, or we do not speak at all, ever." He was quiet for the length of 2 rain sheets against the window. Then he stepped back. He did not step out. He stepped back to the doorway, exactly the way she had asked, and he placed one shoulder against the frame, in a way that put him in the eye of the corridor camera, without him having to look up at it. His left hand stayed on the jacket. His right hand hung open at his side, palm forward, empty. 10 in the morning, he said. "Second floor office. Door open, camera on. Bring your service log." "Yes, sir." "Miss Bennett." "Sir." The lock? He looked at the brass plate on the door beside his hip, and his voice dropped 1 full step. "Say that again." "It is tampered." She held his eyes. "I tried it twice. Something is wedged inside the pin. It closes, but it does not lock. Nothing moved in his face, but something moved behind his face. She saw it the way you see a fish move in dark water. You do not see the fish, you see the water disturbed. Chief Choi will look at it tonight, he said. Finish, dry, dress. Take the service stair down to the west corridor, not the main stair. The service stair is blind to the east cameras. You will not be recorded leaving this wing. She understood in that instant that he was protecting her from a story before the story was written. She also understood that a man who knows which camera sees what corner of his own house at 11 at night is not a man who wandered into the wrong bathroom by accident. Thank you, sir. He inclined his head 1 degree, the exact degree she had used on her chin, and he stepped fully back into the corridor. The half-open door stayed half open. She heard his shoes on the stone, moving away, unhurried, 4 measured steps, then a 5th, then a door somewhere down the hall, opening and closing on a soft latch. Brooke stayed where she was until her breath came back down. She counted to 20 in her mother's voice. Then she moved. She did not look at the mirror. She dried, fast, in the sharp mechanical way her mother had dried her as a child on winter mornings in the small bathroom on 138th. Arms up, arms down, next. She stepped into the uniform, black dress mid-thigh, white frilled apron tied at the back, double knotted because tonight was a double knot night, starched white collar, white cuffs, sheer stockings, closed black low-heel shoes. She pinned the large white flower back above her right temple with the 2 hairpins she kept in the apron pocket for exactly this, and she straightened it in the mirror with the tip of 1 finger, the way her mother had taught her. Petals angled forward, yellow and red center facing the room, so that whoever met her met the flower first and her second. She took the service stair. He had not lied about the cameras. She counted 3 blind corners on the way down and catalogued them. In the west corridor, the storm was louder because the windows were tall and single-paned, and she walked the length of it with her hands folded in front of her apron, like a woman who had done nothing more interesting tonight than change a bath mat. She passed the head housekeeper at the mouth of the servants' hall. The housekeeper did not raise her eyes. Brooke filed that. In the small room she had been given 7 days ago, she sat on the edge of the narrow bed and did not turn on the lamp. She unpinned the flower and set it on the pillow beside her thigh. She looked at her own hands and watched them stop shaking on their own time, without asking them to. 3 things she knew now that she had not known at 10:40. 1. The lock on the restricted wing bathroom had been tampered with, and the tampering had sent her into a room where the master of the house happened to arrive at exactly the same time. 2. Seo Ji-hoon had understood, inside 1 blink, that she had understood. 3. Someone in this house had wanted a story tonight, and the story they had wanted was a black housemaid on day 7, caught half-dressed in the master's private bathroom, screaming or seducing. Either one would do. Either one was the same story once it hit the kitchen at breakfast. And she had refused to give them the scream. She had refused to give them the seduction. 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 She had refused to give them the seduction, or nothing. She lay back on the narrow bed with the flower still on the pillow beside her, and she listened to the storm hammer the roof, and she planned, in her mother's voice, the shape of her morning. She would be up at 5. She would iron the second apron, because the first had a coffee mark she had not been able to lift. She would eat nothing for breakfast, because a stomach full of rice in a room full of women looking for a reason was a stomach that would betray her at the wrong second. She would take her service log to the second-floor office at 9:50. She would knock once. She would wait to be told to enter. She would leave the door open behind her. She would sit only if he pointed at a chair, and she would not, under any weather, be alone with him in a room without a witness for as long as she wore the black dress and the white apron of this house. She slept in 20-minute pieces. The storm never stopped. At 4:50, the alarm on her small phone buzzed against the wood of the nightstand, and she killed it with her thumb before the second buzz. She dressed in the dark. She braided the front of her hair back off her right temple and pinned the flower where the flower always went. She looked at herself in the tiny mirror above the basin, and she said her own full name out loud, once, the way her mother had made her say it every morning before school. Brooke Delilah Bennett. The middle name was her mother's first, and her mother's first was a wall she carried inside her ribs. At 5:15, she was in the ironing room off the main kitchen. The second apron went under the iron on the coolest steam setting because the frills scorched at anything higher. She worked with her back to the door because the door was the door everyone would come through, and she wanted to hear feet, not see faces. Feet came at 5:40. 3 sets. Vivian's soft rubber clogs first, then Minso's flat black service shoes, then Haywan's, which she recognized because Haywan walked on the ball of her foot like a person permanently about to strike. Well, Vivian's voice came into the room ahead of her body. The new girl is up early. Brooke did not turn from the iron. The pipe woke me. The pipe. Vivian let the word sit. Yes, the pipe. Minso did not speak. Minso had not spoken to Brooke since Tuesday. Brooke set the iron down on its heel and reached for the corner of the apron and pressed the seam flat with the side of her thumb before she turned around. Vivian was leaning in the doorway in her white double-breasted chef jacket, the small silver crucifix hanging above the top button, her gray hair in the tight low bun she never let slip. Her arms were folded. Her small dark eyes moved over Brooke's face and the flower above Brooke's temple and the double-knotted apron at Brooke's back, and she nodded once, as if she were confirming a suspicion, and she smiled the polite square smile that Brooke had already learned meant nothing except that Vivian had picked her weapon for the morning. There was a call about the east wing, Vivian said. The stone in the second-floor corridor. Someone tracked wet footprints from the restricted bathroom all the way to the service stair last night. You are on the knees today, Miss Bennett. Bucket, brush, no mop. 9 to 12. Start after breakfast. Behind Vivian, Haywan's mouth moved in the shape of a private word to Minso, and Minso's eyes went to the floor. Brooke folded the second apron over her arm and set the iron upright. Yes, ma'am. Oh, and Miss Bennett? Ma'am. Your personal locker in the staff hall. Vivian's smile did not change 1 millimeter. The latch, it appears to have been opened during the night. Nothing missing, we checked. But you may want to look later when you have the time. Brooke felt the room narrow to the width of the ironing board, and she kept her face exactly where it had been. Thank you, ma'am. I will look now. She walked past the 3 of them without hurry. Her flower stayed forward. Her apron stayed double-knotted. She turned into the staff hall and she saw, from 10 steps away, the small brass door of her locker hanging 1 inch open, and the pin of the padlock lying on the floor beneath it, snapped clean through. Brooke walked the 10 steps at the same pace she used when carrying hot tea, no faster, no slower. The brass door of the locker sat 1 inch open. The pin lay on the concrete floor like a tooth. She crouched, picked it up, turned it once between 2 fingers, snapped clean, not sawed, not filed, broken by a tool built to break pins. She opened the door with her knuckle, not her fingertip. Inside, her second apron, folded, her rain shoes, a hair tie, a cheap comb, a photograph of her mother taped to the inside of the door, corners still flat. Nothing missing, nothing added. That was the answer she needed, and the answer they had needed, and neither of them had it yet. She closed the door softly. She dropped the broken pin into the front pocket of the apron. Evidence lives with the person it was used against, her mother used to say when she was 8 and losing a tooth. She stood, smoothed the front of the dress, and walked back toward the stone corridor with her bucket and her brush. Vivian was waiting at the top of the service stairs, hands folded over the black apron, small silver crucifix riding on the collar of the white chef jacket. Hanol, K-fam. This woman weaponized calm the way other women weaponized voices. Anything gone, sweetheart? No, ma'am. That is a blessing. Yes, ma'am. Vivian tipped her chin toward the stone corridor. 9 to 12. The corners deserve the same attention as the middle. Mr. Choi walks that hall today. Brooke understood the sentence under the sentence. Chief Choi walks it today, so someone in a black uniform on her knees will be seen by the head of security, and the story will not require Vivian's mouth. She bowed her chin an inch, exactly the inch the house expected, and turned into the corridor with the bucket. At 9 sharp, she was on her knees. The stone was old, cold through the thin sheer stockings, and the water in the bucket was bitter with pine. She scrubbed the way her mother had taught her to scrub a church basement floor, back to the wall, moving toward the exit, so no one ever walked across the clean part. Discipline is a form of dignity, Delilah Bennett had said. If they want to see a woman on her knees, let them see a woman who chose the pattern. 10 minutes past 9, the polished shoes came around the corner. Not Daejin, Ji-hoon, black bespoke, tie loosened one finger, jacket buttoned. He stopped 4 steps from her. She did not stand. She did not look up past the shoes. She kept the brush moving in the small tight circle she had committed to. Miss Bennett, sir, 10 in the office. That has not changed. No, sir. Rise. With respect, sir, I was ordered to 9 to 12 on this floor by the head cook. If I rise before the order lifts, the order changes shape by lunch. Silence, 3 seconds. She heard him breathe in through the nose, then his voice again, softer, aimed only at her ear. The order lifts. Rise. She rose. She did not brush her knees. She left the 2 dark half-moons on the stone as her signature. She lifted the bucket by the handle so the water did not slosh, and she looked at him fully for the first time in daylight. His face in the morning light was not the face from the mirror. Younger, more tired. A small nick under the left jaw where a razor had slipped. "Second floor office," he said. "Now." "Sir, my service log is in the staff hall. You asked me to bring it." "Get it. Come up." He turned before she answered. She watched the back of the black jacket move down the corridor, and she counted, because counting is what her hands did when her chest did other things. 14 steps to the corner. He did not look back. She dumped the pine water in the utility sink, rinsed the bucket, dried her hands on the inside hem of the apron so the front stayed clean. In the staff hall, she pulled the black cloth-bound log from the top shelf of her locker, dropped in the broken pin next to it, added the small folded page where she had written the times of the 5 blackouts and the position of the corridor camera. She closed the door. She did not lock it. A lock protects a thing only when the enemy respects the lock. The second-floor office had 1 door and it was open. The camera above the door had a red pin light that was on. Both promises kept. Daejin stood inside, back to the window, hands folded low in front. Ji-hoon sat behind the desk. There was a single chair in front of the desk. There was tea for one, and it was in front of the empty chair, not in front of him. "Sit," Ji-hoon said, "or stand, whichever protects you." She sat, because refusing the chair would have been a performance, and she did not perform for cameras she had asked for herself. She placed the log on her lap. She did not touch the tea. "Chief Choi has examined the bathroom lock," Ji-hoon said. "You were right. The pin was shimmed with a filed toothpick, then reset so the tongue would not catch." Daejin spoke once. "The toothpick came from the kitchen tray, ma'am." Same brand, only the head cook orders." Brooke absorbed the sentence without moving her face. She had already known. Hearing it named was different from knowing it. Named, it became a thing she could hold. Ji-hoon leaned back. "I am offering you protection. In-house. Personal detail. A separate room in the East Wing. The kitchen no longer touches your assignments. The head cook does not speak to you." "No, sir." He blinked once. Slow. "No? With respect. If I move to the East Wing, the story writes itself by dinner. If the head cook cannot speak to me, the story writes itself by breakfast. Personal detail with the head of security, means the story writes itself by the 10 o'clock news. I do not want the story you are trying to spare me from. I want the story to die. How does the story die? By being boring. I stay in the staff wing. I take orders from the head cook. I scrub the stones 9 to 12. I finish the week the way any new girl finishes her first week. And you, sir, do nothing visible for me, because visible protection is a confession the house did not commit. The room held its breath. Daejin's eyes moved from her to Ji-hoon and back. Ji-hoon's mouth moved a half inch, not a smile, the memory of one. And privately, sir, I would like the broken lock replaced with a new lock keyed to me. I would like a phone in the staff hall connected to Chief Choi's line, not to the housekeeper's. I would like the corridor camera above the restricted bathroom pointed at the door of the bathroom, not at the ceiling, which is where I noticed it points this morning. And I would like the tampered pin, which is in my apron pocket now, kept by Chief Choi and not by the head cook's supervisor. She reached into the pocket, produced the broken pin, and set it on the desk between the tea and the tea saucer. The metal ticked once against the wood. Daejin stepped forward, lifted the pin between two fingers, examined it under the lamp. New. Bought last week, sir, Brooke said. The old pin on my locker had rust on the hasp. This one does not. Someone changed it before they broke it. Ji-hoon did not move for 4 seconds. Then, give her what she asked for. All of it. Today. Yes, sir. Miss Bennett. Sir. Why did you not accept the room in the East Wing? Because the East Wing has one exit, sir, and it passes the kitchen. He looked at her the way a man looks at a door he did not know was there until it opened. Then, 12 o'clock. You are excused from the corridor at 12. Lunch in the staff hall. Same as the others. Yes, sir. She stood. She placed the log back under her arm. She walked to the door. At the threshold, she stopped, because the small part of her mother's voice, that had been quiet since dawn, was moving again. Sir. Yes? Whoever adjusted the camera in the restricted corridor did it between 11 and midnight last night. The pin light blinks twice when it is powered off and on. I counted 2 blinks at 11:40. Whoever did it did not know the pin light blinks. They watch, but they do not maintain. She did not wait for him to answer. She stepped into the corridor. She heard, behind her, Daejin's low quiet. She saw the pin light, and Ji-hoon's low quieter. She saw everything. The door did not close. The camera did not stop. Both promises kept. She walked back down to the stones. She was on her knees at 10:28. Vivian passed at 10:35, saw her there, saw the water changed clean, saw the pine bucket empty of any excuse, and passed without a word. The absence of the word was louder than any word Vivian could have chosen. Brooke did not lift her head. At 12 she rose. She emptied the bucket. She washed her hands to the elbow. She walked into the staff hall through the servants' entrance to the main kitchen, and the kitchen was full, because the kitchen was always full at 12. Min Seo at the long steel counter chopping green onion, Haewon stirring a wide pot of clear beef broth, 2 younger girls she did not know at the sink, Vivian at the head of the counter, tasting from a wooden spoon, back to the door. Brooke did not walk to the staff table. She walked to the center of the kitchen, 3 steps from Vivian's back. She set the log on the steel counter. The sound was small and flat, and everyone in the room heard it. Ma'am? Vivian did not turn. Ma'am? I would like to say one thing, so it is said once, and does not need saying again. The wooden spoon lowered. Vivian turned. The face was polite. The eyes were not. Speak, child. I am Brooke Delilah Bennett. I am the new housemaid. I have been in this house 7 days. On the 8th day, which is today, my locker pin was broken during the night with a tool that leaves the pin snapped, not sawed. Nothing was taken. Nothing was left. The person who broke that pin was looking for a token that would tell a story about me and a room upstairs. That token does not exist. It does not exist because the thing they wanted to prove did not happen. And it will not exist tomorrow because it did not exist yesterday. Min So's knife stopped. Haewon's spoon kept moving in the pot, slower. I will scrub whatever floor I am told to scrub. I will iron whatever aprons I am told to iron. I will keep my hair pinned, and my mouth polite, and my hands clean. But if a story about me is served in this kitchen with the morning bread, I will find the person who baked it, and I will ask them, in this kitchen, in front of everyone, to bake it again to my face. Because the only thing a woman like me owns in a house like this is her name, and my name is not for the breakfast tray. She lifted the log. She did not look at Vivian's eyes now. She looked at the crucifix at Vivian's throat. Ma'am. My assignments this afternoon. Vivian's mouth opened, closed. The polite mask slipped 1 millimeter and slid back. Silver. The dining room. Polish all of it. Cloth in the second drawer. Yes, ma'am. Brooke picked up the log. She walked to the staff table. She sat. She poured herself a cup of the barley tea from the shared pot, and she drank it the way a woman drinks tea when she has decided the temperature of the room will not decide the temperature of her tea. None of the other girls spoke. Min Seo's eyes came up once from the green onion, met Brooke's for a second, dropped. Haewon's eyes did not come up at all. At the doorway to the corridor, invisible from where Vivian stood at the counter, but visible from the staff table, Seo Ji-hoon was standing with one shoulder against the frame. Jacket off, sleeves rolled to the forearm. He had been there long enough that the light behind him had shifted a hand's width across the floor. He did not enter. He did not speak. He waited until Brooke's eyes lifted and found him. Then he moved his chin 1/8 of an inch. Received. Understood. He was gone before Vivian turned again. Brooke drank the rest of the tea. She stood. She went to the second drawer, took the polishing cloth, took the silver tray from the top shelf, and walked toward the dining room. As she passed Vivian, she stopped. She did not turn her face. She spoke to the air between them. Ma'am, the pin from my locker is now with Chief Choi. He asked where the toothpicks in the kitchen tray were purchased. I told him I did not know. I told him you would. The wooden spoon in Vivian's hand made one small motion it was not supposed to make. A tremor. Half a second. Then still again. Brooke walked on. She did not look back. In the office upstairs, Ji-hoon closed the office door behind him and Dae-jin, and only then. He walked to the tall window, hands behind him, and watched the courtyard where the delivery van from the fish market was being unloaded by 2 of the security men. She refused the East Wing, Dae-jin said. I heard. She refused the personal detail. I heard. Sir, she is running the operation better than we are. Ji-hoon did not answer for a long moment. When he did, his voice was quieter than before. The lock in the restricted bathroom last night. Confirm it for me one more time. In your own words. Deliberate, sir. The toothpick was shaved to a thickness the lock uses. The tongue would not seat. The door would swing on any bump. It was set up between 6 and 7 in the evening, when the maids clear the second-floor towels. She was sent up at 10:42. The pipe was cut. Cut! Under the sink, sir. Clean cut. Not burst. The head cook signed the plumbing log at 4:50. Ji-hoon closed his eyes for 1 second. So the door was set to open. The pipe was set to send her. The camera was pointed at the ceiling, and I was in the office next door, because everyone in this house knows I work through storms. Yes, sir. They wanted a photograph of me in that doorway. Yes, sir. And she stood there, in a robe, with a flower on the counter, and instead of screaming or seducing me, she gave me 3 rules and sent me back to the corridor. Yes, sir. Ji-hoon opened his eyes. He turned from the window. She is not disposable, Dae-jin. No, sir. The head cook thinks she is. Yes, sir. Do not correct that opinion yet. Let it walk further. Watch every hand it shakes. Yes, sir. And the phone in the staff hall. Wire it before dinner. To your line, not mine. She asked for your line, and she was right to ask for your line. Yes, sir. Ji-hoon walked back to the desk. He looked at the empty chair. The tea he had poured for her, untouched, was cold now. One more thing, sir. If anything is planted in her locker in the next 72 hours, a note, a piece of jewelry, a photograph, anything, I want to know within 10 minutes. Not an hour, 10 minutes. Understood, sir. And Dae-jin. Sir. The Bennett name, run it, quietly, full file. Mother, father, grandparents, siblings if any. New York, everywhere they have lived. And any past contact between a Bennett and this family. Any. Dae-jin's eyebrow lifted 1/4 of a millimeter. He did not ask why. He bowed, once, and left. Ji-hoon sat back down at the desk. He did not pick up the cold tea. He picked up the broken pin. He turned it once, twice, 3 times between finger and thumb. New brass, no rust, bought last week. She had seen that in the first second, on her knees in a stone corridor, with a bucket of pine water beside her. He set the pin down. He looked at the open door, at the red pin light on the camera above it, and for the first time in a long time, in his own office, in his own house, he felt observed by something he could not name. Down in the dining room, Brooke laid out 42 pieces of silver in the shape of the long table setting they would be used for tonight. She polished the first fork. She polished the second. When she polished the third, her hand was steady. When she polished the fourth, her hand was steady. When she polished the fifth, her hand was steady. She counted them the way she had counted the 14 steps of a black jacket down a stone corridor. She was still counting when the delivery bell at the service door rang twice, and Vivian's voice from the kitchen said, cheerfully, "The pearls. Someone go up and dust the pearls in the late mistress's room. It has been too long." Brooke's hand, on the 6th fork, did not stop moving. But she heard the sentence, and she filed it, and she understood that the story had already begun to write its 2nd chapter without her permission. Brooke set the 6th fork down and reached for the 7th without looking. Her hands had a rhythm the rest of her didn't need to supervise. The polishing cloth moved in 3 small circles at the base, 1 long stroke up the neck, a quick twist at the tine. 6 seconds apiece, 36 pieces to go. She counted the strokes because counting kept her mouth shut, and keeping her mouth shut kept her ears open, and her ears had picked up something new. The kitchen had gone quiet. Not the quiet of people working, the quiet of people listening. She kept polishing. She let a fork clink against the tray on purpose, soft, ordinary. Then she let another one clink. The quiet in the kitchen kept its shape. Somebody in there was standing very still because Vivian had just shouted about the pearls in the late mistress's room, and somebody had felt the shape of that sentence hit the air, and that somebody was doing math. Brooke did the math with her. Dust the pearls. Too long. Someone go up. The order was thrown into the room like a stone into a pond. No direction, no name attached. Whoever moved to obey it first was the girl Vivian trusted to walk into that room. Whoever hesitated was the girl Vivian was still testing. Nobody moved. Brooke picked up the 7th fork. 3 small circles. 1 long stroke. Quick twist. She heard the wet thud of the wooden spoon going back into the pot of clear broth. Then footsteps, flat, unhurried, coming out of the kitchen into the corridor that ran between the kitchen and the dining room she was standing in. Vivian didn't announce herself. She never did. She just walked into a room and let the room adjust. "You have good hands for silver." Brooke lifted her eyes. She did not raise her chin. "I was taught by a woman who ran a church kitchen for 30 years. Church silver is thin. Church silver is watched." Vivian's mouth moved a millimeter. Not a smile. The muscle a smile uses, warming up and then deciding against. She had a small silver crucifix at the base of her throat, and the chef's jacket was buttoned all the way up in a house, where the head cook usually let the top 2 go. Brooke logged it. Buttoned collar meant Vivian felt exposed at the throat this afternoon, and a woman who felt exposed at the throat was a woman who had just been touched by something she hadn't seen coming. "The mistress's room," Vivian said. "2nd floor, east wing, third door. The pearls are in a mahogany box on the dresser. You dust the box. You open it. You lift the strand with a soft cloth. You wipe underneath. You put it back exactly the way it was. 10 minutes. Come straight back. I was told the East Wing is not on my rotation. You were told a lot of things. I am telling you this. Brooke set the 7th fork down. She did not pick up the 8th. She looked past Vivian's shoulder at the archway that opened onto the service corridor, and past that at the small dark landing where the servants' stair came up, and she thought about the fact that the mistress's room was directly above Ji-hoon's office, and that the pearls had been mentioned in front of 5 women, and that the order had been shouted so it could be repeated later under oath. I will need the housekeeper's key, she said. The East Wing is locked. The door is unlocked today. By whom? By me. For how long? Vivian's eyes did not change. Her mouth did not change. But the muscle at the corner of her jaw pulsed once. A single beat of a heart that was not in her chest. Long enough for you to do the work. Are you refusing an order from the head of kitchen, Miss Bennet? I am asking a question about a task that is not in my rotation. The rotation changed at noon. Then the rotation change is in the log. The log is in the housekeeper's office. I will read it on my way up. Vivian did not step aside. Brooke did not move toward her. For 4 seconds, the dining room held 2 women and 42 pieces of silver, and the small, clean smell of polish, and the deeper smell of the broth simmering in the next room, and neither of them blinked. The silver on the table caught the winter light coming through the tall windows and threw a thin, cold line across Vivian's jacket, right at the crucifix. The service phone on the wall by the pantry rang. 1 ring, 2 rings. It was the internal line, the small black rotary the old house had refused to retire, and it rang the way only that phone could ring, a dry mechanical bell that made the whole east side of the ground floor stop. Vivian did not turn her head. Brooke did not turn hers. The phone rang a 3rd time, and Vivian's shoulders lifted a 1/4 inch and settled, and she stepped back 1 step, then another, and she said, "Finish the silver first," and walked back toward the kitchen, at the same flat pace she had come. Brooke listened. The phone rang a 4th time. Then Min So's small voice picked it up in the kitchen, and Min So said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, sir," and hung up. Vivian's footsteps stopped in the middle of the kitchen. Brooke picked up the 8th fork. Min So appeared in the archway with her hands folded in front of her apron. She did not look at Vivian, who was 3 feet behind her. She looked straight at Brooke. Chief Choi requests that Miss Bennet come to the 2nd floor office. Now. Whose order? Vivian said. The master's. Through Chief Choi. Through Chief Choi. Miss Bennet is polishing silver for tonight's table. The master said now. Brooke set the 8th fork on the tray, aligned it with the 7th, wiped her fingertips on the inside of her apron so no polish would touch anything else in the house, and stood up. She did not look at Vivian. She followed Min So through the archway, through the service corridor, past the housekeeper's door, up the narrow back stair. Min So walked half a step ahead. When they reached the landing on the 2nd floor, Min So stopped and did not turn around. He asked for you. I heard. I did not want to be the one who came. Brooke waited. I have been in this house 4 years. I have watched 3 girls leave in cars with no windows in the back. Look at me, Min So. Min So did not look at her. When you are ready to say the thing you want to say it in a room with a door and a witness. Not in a stairwell. Min So's chin dipped once. She turned and went back down the stairs. Brooke stood on the landing for 1 full breath, and then walked the length of the corridor to the 2nd floor office. The door was open. The camera above the door frame had its pin light red. Dae-jin was standing inside, near the window, his earpiece live, and Ji-hoon was seated at the desk with a thin black folder closed in front of him, and a small cassette recorder, next to the folder, and a 2nd chair placed at a precise angle to his own. He looked up. Come in. She stepped in. She stayed standing. Sit, please. I would prefer to stand until I know why I am here. Dajin's eyes moved to Ji-hoon. Dajin's nodded once. He slid the cassette recorder 6 inches toward the near edge of the desk. The recorder was old, the kind with a hinged plastic door over the tape, and the tape inside it was wound almost to the end of the A side. He did not press play. "You made a request this morning," he said. "You asked for the corridor camera to be pointed at the door instead of the ceiling. It was repointed at 11:15. Between 11:20 and 11:40, someone attempted to unplug the coaxial cable in the housekeeper's utility closet. The attempt failed because Chief Choi had already rerouted the feed through the security wing. We have 4 minutes of footage of the attempt." "Whose hands?" "A woman's hands. Gray sleeves. Silver crucifix visible at the collar when she leaned. Face not in frame. That is not enough for a room. It is not." "Then why am I here?" Ji-hoon touched the top of the cassette recorder with one fingertip. "This was brought to Chief Choi 17 minutes ago by a member of the staff who does not want her name in the room yet. It is one side of a phone conversation. It was recorded on a personal device in the pantry between 4 and 4:15 this afternoon. The voice giving the orders is the head of kitchen. The voice receiving the orders is a man. I have listened to it once. I want you to listen to it once before we decide what happens tonight." "Why me?" "Because the orders are about you." Brooke sat down. She sat in the chair placed at the precise angle to his own, and she folded her hands in her lap the way her mother had taught her to fold them, in a room where a decision was being made about her body, and she waited. Ji-hoon opened the plastic door of the recorder, lifted the tape 1 millimeter, closed the door, and pressed play. The tape hissed. A kettle whistled in the background, low, distant. Then Vivian's voice, closer to the phone than she thought she was. "She will go up at 1. I sent the fork tray to the dining room to keep her hands busy until then. The pearls are already in the wrong drawer. If she opens the box, she will see the drawer half out. If she does not open the box, the drawer will be found half out anyway by the girl who dusts at 3. Either way, the room is a mess by 4, and she is the last person who was inside." A pause. A man's voice, tinny, far from the microphone. 2 words. Brooke could not make them out. "No, not the safe. The safe is separate. The safe is tomorrow. Tonight is only the strand and the drawer. One story at a time. He will not move on her if there is only one story. He will move on her if there are 2. Another pause. The man again, longer this time, because a black girl in a Korean house with a pearl strand in her locker is a story every newspaper in this city already knows how to print. That is why." Ji-hoon pressed stop. The office held very still. Dajin did not move from the window. Brooke did not move from the chair. Ji-hoon set his hand flat on top of the recorder and left it there. "I have heard enough," Brooke said. "There is one more line. Play it." He pressed play. The tape hissed. Vivian's voice, quieter now. "Do not tell him I said his name. He does not like his name in a kitchen." The tape hissed on. Ji-hoon pressed stop. Brooke looked at the cassette. She looked at the folder. She looked at the man across the desk who had known, this morning, at 10, when he sat across from her with a cup of tea and a pin light, and offered her a room in the East Wing, that a woman 2 floors below was already writing the ending of her week. She did not need to ask him if he had known. She could see it in the angle of his shoulders, and in the way his hand was flat on top of the recorder, and in the fact that the second chair had been placed at that precise angle to his own before she walked in. "How long?" she said. "Since this morning. Before this morning. 3 weeks." Her hands did not move in her lap. Her face did not move. Only the small, dark beauty mark at the upper corner of her lip caught the light when her breath went in. 3 weeks. "I did not know it was you. I knew it was a housemaid. I knew the plan was to place a black housemaid at the center of a story about me and a bathroom and a mirror. I knew the story would be sold to a paper in the pocket of Snow Wolf. I knew the plan had been paid for through the kitchen. I did not know your name until 7 days ago. I did not know your face until last night. And when you knew my face, I let the story keep walking. You let it walk. I let it walk into a corridor I controlled. I put the camera on a live feed to the security wing. I put a man in the housekeeper's closet from 10 last night. I told Minso yesterday morning that if she chose to record anything in the pantry, no one would ask her whose device it was. I did not tell you any of this because a woman who knows she is being protected walks differently, and a woman who walks differently is not the bait the trap is set for. You used me. I used the story that was being written about you. I did not touch you. You let a woman in this house send me on my knees to a stone corridor for 3 hours. Yes. You let a woman in this house break my locker and shouted at me at 5 in the morning. Yes. You let a woman in this house send me upstairs at 1 o'clock to a room where a strand of pearls was already in the wrong drawer. I did not let that happen. That is what stops now. It stops now because the tape is in your hand. It stops now because the tape is in your hand, and because you are sitting in a chair I placed at an angle that lets you see the door, and because Chief Choi has been in that window since 11, and because at 1 o'clock nobody sends you anywhere. It stops now, Miss Bennett, because I am telling you it stops. She stood up. She stood up slowly, the way a woman stands up in her mother's church when a hymn ends, and there is a decision to be made about whether to sing the next verse or sit down. Ji-hoon did not stand with her. Dae-jin at the window did not move. She smoothed the front of her apron with the flat of one hand, and she felt the 2 knots of the tie at the small of her back, still doubled, still tight, and she felt the small weight of the broken pin, still in the bottom of her apron pocket, where she had carried it since the corridor at 6 that morning. You are an elegant version of the same evil, Mr. Seo. She said it without heat. She said it the way a woman reads out a receipt. You are a man who watches a woman walk into a fire to see who lit the match. You knew who lit it. You had 3 weeks to put it out. You waited because a fire that burns in your own house is easier to map than a fire that burns in someone else's. You waited because the girl on her knees in your corridor was cheaper than a private investigator. You waited because I was, until 7 days ago, a name on a list, and until last night, a face in a camera. I am not going to thank you for the chair or the angle or the man in the window. I am going to walk out of this office and down that corridor, and back to the dining room, and I am going to finish polishing the silver, because 34 forks is 34 forks, and my hands were taught by a woman who did not leave a job half done. And then I am going to walk out of this house. Ji-hoon did not answer. Do not send anyone after me on the stair. Do not put a man at my door. Do not have Chief Choi standing at the service entrance when I come down at 6. If you want to speak to me again, you will speak to me in a room I have chosen, with a door I have opened, at an hour I have named. Am I clear? You are clear. Then I will go finish the silver. She turned. She walked out of the office at the same flat, unhurried pace Vivian had used in the dining room an hour before, and she went down the corridor and down the narrow back stair, and she did not stop on the landing where Min-so had refused to look at her, and she did not stop in the service corridor where the phone had rung, and she walked into the dining room and picked up the 9th fork and started the 3 small circles at the base. Behind her, 2 floors below and 1 wing over, Vivian Holloway stood in the middle of her kitchen with a wooden spoon in her hand and a clear broth simmering at a temperature she had stopped watching, and she felt, for the first time in 11 years of service in that house, the cold, clean line of a story that was no longer being written by her hand. Upstairs, the office door closed. Gi-hoon set the tape back in the folder. Dae-jin, at the window, said only one sentence. She is going to walk. I know. Tonight. I know. Do you want a man on the gate? No. Do you want the dossier now? Ji-hoon looked at the closed folder on the desk. He looked at the second chair, still angled the way he had placed it, still holding, faintly, the shape of a woman who had sat in it for 6 minutes and stood up a different woman than the one who came in. Bring me the file on the mother, tonight, before she leaves. Dae-jin left. The office door clicked shut. Ji-hoon did not open the folder. He sat with his hand flat on top of it, the way a man rests his hand on the lid of a coffin before it is carried out, and he waited for the 9th fork downstairs to be set down and the 10th to be picked up, because he could hear it through the floor if he listened, and he was listening. Downstairs, the 9th fork found the tray, then the 10th. Brooke's hands kept the 6-second rhythm, and her mind ran a different clock. She had a room in the servant quarters, a duffel under the bed, a small envelope in the inside pocket of a coat she had not worn since October, and a mother's photograph wrapped in a handkerchief in the second drawer. 2 trips up the back stair. 15 minutes. She could be through the service gate by 6:30, and on a bus by 7, and inside her cousin's apartment in Queens by 9, and by 10, she could be a woman whose name was not written down anywhere in this house. She set the 11th fork down and reached for the 12th. Her fingers were steady, her breath was long. She thought about the tape and about the drawer half out and about a strand of pearls that belonged to a woman she had never met, and she thought about the sentence a man's voice on the tape had almost said, the 2 words she had not been able to hear, and she filed the missing sentence in the same pocket where she kept the broken pin. The 12th fork joined the 11th. The dining room was very quiet, and above her the office door stayed shut, and behind her the kitchen had not moved, and somewhere in the walls of the house a clock she could not see ticked 1 o'clock and passed it, and no one came for her. She was on the 15th fork when the drill chime did not sound. Every afternoon at 1:40, the fire panel on the 2nd floor sent a single test tone down the service pipes, 1 clean note the whole house had learned to ignore. Brooke had heard it every day for 7 days. Today it did not come. She kept polishing. 3 small circles at the base, 1 long pull along the neck, a quick twist at the tines. Fork 16. In the part of her mind already packing the duffel under the cot, a flag went up. Something in the house had moved the schedule. At 1:42, Hae-won Lim crossed the dining room without looking at her. Hae-won's route from the kitchen to the linen closet ran along the back service hall, always. The dining room was head housemaid territory. Brooke tracked her from the corner of one eye and kept the cloth moving. Hae-won carried a small silver tray with 1 folded napkin on it and no meal to serve. She walked to the far end of the room, set the tray on the sideboard, adjusted the napkin 1 degree with 2 fingers, and left the way she came. Brooke finished fork 17, set it down, picked up 18. She counted the seconds since Hae-won had passed. 12, 13, 14. At 16 seconds she heard, from 2 floors above, the soft double thud of an interior door closing against a rug. Not a slam, a push. Someone had opened a door slowly, and closed it slowly, and did not want the closing to sound like anything. The office. The safe. She did not lift her head. She polished. Fork 18. Fork 19. Her heartbeat did not accelerate, because her heartbeat had been at this speed since she'd stepped out of Ji-hoon's office an hour before. There was no more room in her chest for surprise, only for arithmetic. If the drill did not ring, the 2nd floor camera in the corridor outside the office was on its own separate feed with no cross-check. If Hae-won had walked to the far sideboard, she had used the mirror above it to check the reflection of the 2nd floor landing, which Brooke could not see from where she sat. If a door on the 2nd floor had closed at 1:42 plus 16, someone had timed a movement to slip in behind the covered eye. Vivian had said the safe was tomorrow. Vivian was wrong, or Vivian had lied. Brooke set down fork 19. Very softly, she pushed the tray of remaining silver 2 inches away from her, so no one who walked past would think she had abandoned the work. Then she stood up, smoothed her apron flat across her hips, and walked to the service corridor with the pace of a housemaid on her way to fetch more polish. She did not run. Running left a body in a hallway. She walked. At the internal telephone on the pantry wall, she lifted the receiver and dialed the 2-digit code Ji-hoon had wired to Dae-jin's line that morning. It rang once, and Dae-jin picked up. "Bennett," she said. Go, he said. Someone just walked into the office, from the servant's stair, not the front. There was a beat of silence on the other end that was not confusion, it was calculation. How do you know? The 1:40 drill did not ring. Hye-won crossed the dining room to look at the landing in the sideboard mirror. A door closed above me at 1:42. Stay on the line. She heard him speak away from the receiver in Korean. 3 words, low and flat. She heard the crackle of another radio somewhere. She heard him come back. Do not move from the pantry. Master is in the library on the 1st floor. He will be with you in 90 seconds. She hung up. She stayed in the pantry, back against the shelf of tinned peaches, and worked the math. Vivian had lost the pearl play at 12:40 when the internal line pulled Brooke out of the schedule. A woman who had run this kitchen for 11 years did not lose a whole afternoon of planning without moving the pieces to a different board. The pearls had been the small theft, planted on a housemaid for a 2-day rumor. The safe had been the big theft, meant for tomorrow. Vivian had brought the safe forward, and Vivian had told someone else to move. Ji-hoon came in through the far door of the pantry with his jacket over his arm, and no sound at all in his shoes. He looked at her once. Which door? 2nd floor, east wing, from the servant's stair side. How long ago? 2 minutes now. He did not answer. He turned and walked out the way he had come. Dae-jin was already in the corridor behind him with 2 men Brooke had never seen in the house before, both in dark suits, both moving with the particular economy of men who had been in the building longer than she had. They went up the service stair together, one behind the other, without a word. Brooke stayed in the pantry. She did not know what happened above her for the next 11 minutes. She counted them. She did not go back to the dining room. Going back to the dining room meant walking past the mouth of the service stair, and if a body was going to come down that stair, she did not want to be its first witness. At the 11th minute, the internal telephone rang. She picked up. Bennett, come up. Master's office. She climbed the service stair. The corridor at the top was empty. The office door was open. Inside, Dae-jin stood by the window with one hand at his earpiece. Ji-hoon was at the desk, and on the desk lay 2 things that had not been there an hour ago: a single sheet of paper, folded once, and a small strand of pearls, coiled loose on the wood like something a hand had dropped there in a hurry. Brooke stopped in the doorway. She looked at the pearls. She did not look at Ji-hoon. Where were those? In your locker, Dae-jin said. 10 minutes ago, under the folded uniform. My man opened the door for the check, and there they were. Whose pearls? Late mistress's. She let out a breath that was not a sigh. It was a small, clean exhale, the kind a runner makes at the top of a hill. And the paper. Ji-hoon spoke for the first time. The paper was in the safe this morning. It is here now because I moved it here at noon. What was in the safe at 1:42 was a copy that reads exactly the same, except for one changed digit in the account number. Whoever opened the safe at 1:42 believes they have the real one. Who opened it? Hye-won. She did look at him then. He held her eyes. Vivian sent her, he said. Vivian could not go herself because she has been in the kitchen since noon in front of 3 witnesses. She needed a second body. Hye-won was already carrying the necklace to your locker. She dropped the necklace, went up the service stair, took the folder, came down the front stair, and put the folder in Vivian's coat pocket in the mudroom 60 seconds ago. My man watched her do it. Brooke thought about the small silver tray with one napkin on it. Hye-won had walked to the sideboard to check the mirror because she needed to know if anyone from the dining room could see the landing. She had adjusted the napkin because she needed a reason to have been there. The napkin was a receipt. Where is Hye-won now? In the linen closet on the 2nd floor. My man is with her. She does not know he is there. And Vivian, still in the kitchen, stirring the broth. Brooke walked into the office. She did not sit. She stood at the corner of the desk and she looked at the pearls, at their soft, irregular gleam under the desk lamp. and she thought about the woman in the burgundy Sunday dress in the photograph in the second drawer of her cot, back in the servants' quarters, and she thought about the middle name that woman had given her, and she said, very evenly, "You will call the staff, all of them, to the main hall, now, before Vivian has time to think." Ji-hoon watched her. "That is what I was going to do. Then do it, and put the pearls back on this desk, where I can see them from where I will stand. And do not touch the paper. And when Vivian comes in, do not look at her first. Look at me." Dae-jin's mouth did something at the corner that was not quite a smile. "Bennett," Ji-hoon said, "you are meant to be leaving this house at 6:30. I am still leaving this house at 6:30. That is a separate conversation. First we finish this one." He nodded once. He picked up the desk phone. He spoke 4 words in Korean into it. Somewhere in the house, a small bell began to ring, the assembly bell, the one that had not been rung in this house since a funeral 11 years before. The sound of it went through the walls like water finding cracks. Brooke walked out of the office ahead of him. She went down the front stair, not the service stair, and every servant she passed on the way flattened themselves against the wall to let her go by. The apron was double knotted. The white flower sat above her right temple, where it had sat since 4:50 that morning. Her hands did not shake. The main hall of the Seo mansion was a room built to hold 100 people, and rarely held 6. Marble floor, 2 staircases along the north wall in a matched curve. A long, dark table down the center. Brooke walked to the center of the room, stopped 4 paces from the head of the table, and turned to face the doors. They came in, one by one. The 2 younger girls from the kitchen sink, wide-eyed, apron corners twisted. The 3 groundsmen from outside, still with dirt on their boots. The head housekeeper, mouth in a hard line, refusing to look anywhere but the floor. Min So Park with her hands folded and her chin tucked. Haewon Lim, walking ahead of a man in a dark suit, whose hand was not touching her back, but was close enough to it. And Vivian Holloway, chef's jacket still buttoned to the throat, small silver crucifix at her collar, walking as she always walked, which was to say, as if the room belonged to her. Vivian stopped at the far end of the table. She saw the pearls before she saw Brooke. She saw the pearls on the desk through the open office door above the staircase, because Ji-hoon had left that door open on purpose. Her step did not falter. Her jaw did. Ji-hoon came down the north stair. He did not use the banister. When he reached the floor, he did not go to the head of the table. He went to Brooke's left shoulder and stopped 1 pace behind her, so that anyone looking at Brooke would see him in the frame with her, and anyone looking at him would have to look at her first. "Everyone who works in this house is in this room," he said. He said it in English. He said it once. "In the last 2 hours, a strand of pearls belonging to my late mother was taken from her room and placed in the locker of Brooke Bennett. In the last 20 minutes, a document was taken from the safe in my office and placed in the coat pocket of a member of this staff. The pearls were found. The document was found. The person who moved the pearls has been identified. The person who received the document has been identified. Both are in this room. Nobody moved." Vivian's hand at her side opened and closed once. "The evidence against Miss Bennett is that pearls belonging to me were found in her locker. That is the entire evidence. I am telling every one of you now in this hall, so that no one leaves this hall telling a different story to anyone outside it. That evidence is worth nothing. The pearls were placed there by another hand, and the hand has been named." He paused. He did not raise his voice at any point in the following sentence. "Miss Bennett is under the protection of this house. Anyone who repeats otherwise, in this house or outside it, will answer to me directly." The head housekeeper's eyes came up off the floor for the first time. One of the young sink girls made a small sound in her throat. Vivian did not move. Brooke spoke then, and she did not turn her head to look at Ji-hoon when she spoke. She looked straight down the length of the table at Vivian Holloway. "Mrs. Holloway," she said. Her voice was even and it carried. "You told me at 12:30 to go up to the late mistress's room at 1 o'clock and dust the pearl case. You told me the door was unlocked. You had signed the rotation change at noon. You told me the pearls were in a drawer. You did not tell me which drawer, because the pearls were already in the wrong drawer, because you had put them there, because you had planned for me to be found beside them. I did not go. Chief Choi called me to the master's office instead, so you sent Hae-won. Vivian's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She closed it again. You have run this kitchen for 11 years, Brooke said. In 11 years, you have never lost control of a stock pot before this afternoon. I walked past the range at 12:40, and the broth was already going cold under your hand. You knew then that the schedule had slipped out of your fingers, and you moved the safe up from tomorrow to today, and you sent a girl to do it who is standing 3 feet from you now, with a man from security behind her right shoulder. She turned her head then, half an inch, toward Hae-won. Miss Lim, you crossed my dining room at 1:42, carrying a silver tray with 1 napkin on it, and no meal to serve. You went to the sideboard to check the landing in the mirror. You adjusted the napkin, so you would have a reason to have been there. The napkin was your alibi. It was a bad alibi. Hae-won's chin did not lift. Her hands were folded in front of her the way Min So's were folded, but the fingers were white at the knuckles. The man behind her shifted his weight a quarter step forward. Brooke turned back to Vivian. You told a man on a tape yesterday afternoon in the pantry that he was not to speak his name because he did not like his name in a kitchen. I have not repeated the name in this room. I am not going to. But you know whose name it is, and so does Mr. Seo, and so does Chief Choi. So the only person in this hall who is still pretending she does not know whose name it is you. Vivian's hand at her side stopped opening and closing. It stayed closed. Ji-hoon stepped forward once, past Brooke's shoulder, into the space at the head of the table. Mrs. Halloway, he said, take off the jacket. Vivian did not move. Take off the jacket. She raised her hands to the top button under her throat. She was not a woman who trembled, but the button was small, and her thumb slipped on it once. She undid the buttons in a line down the front, and she slid the white chef's jacket off her shoulders, and she held it in one hand at her side. The black cotton blouse she wore under it was stained under the arms from a long morning at the stove. Chief Choi will accompany you to my study, Ji-hoon said. You will wait there for me. You will not speak to anyone on the way. Miss Lim will accompany you. He looked at Hae-won without turning his body toward her. Both of you will wait. Daejin moved for the first time. He crossed the marble floor with 2 of his men, and he did not put a hand on Vivian or Hae-won. He did not have to. The 2 women walked ahead of them out of the hall through the north door, and the sound of the 4 sets of footsteps went along the corridor and stopped at the study door, and a lock turned and there was silence. Brooke stood in the center of the hall with the whole remaining staff still lined along the wall. She did not move for a long moment. Then she reached up with her right hand, deliberate and slow, and she touched the white flower above her right temple with 2 fingers, and she straightened it a quarter turn, as if it had shifted, though it had not shifted. It was the smallest possible gesture. Every servant along the wall saw it. It said, I am still here. It said, this house did not take the flower off me. Ji-hoon spoke, quietly, at her shoulder. 6:30, 6:30, she said. You still walk out. I still walk out. I would like to speak with you before you do. You will speak with me at 5, in the library, door open, no one else in the room, not the office. I do not want the office again today. The library at 5. And Mr. Seo. He waited. Whatever it is you are going to say to me at 5, you say all of it. Not the part you have chosen. All of it. Because if you leave one thing out and I find it tomorrow morning in a folder somewhere, I will not come back to this house for any reason for the rest of my life. Do you understand me? He said, yes. All right. She turned. She walked out of the main hall through the south door, past the head housekeeper who now would not stop looking at her, past the 2 young sink girls who had begun quietly to cry, past the groundsmen who had removed their caps at some point and were holding them against their chests. She walked back to the dining room. She sat down at the polishing tray. She picked up fork 20. She began the 3 small circles at the base, one long pull along the neck, a quick twist at the tines. In the office 2 floors above her, on the desk beside the pearls, the folded paper with the changed digit stayed where Ji-hoon had put it, and would stay there for the next 3 hours, waiting for whoever in the world would come looking for it. Brooke set fork 20 down and picked up fork 21, and the small clock in the wall of the dining room ticked past 2, and the house that had tried to break her that morning was quieter now than it had been in 11 years. Brooke reached fork 22 and heard the study door open at the far end of the north corridor. She did not turn. She counted the footsteps instead. 2 men in leather soles, 1 woman in kitchen clogs. The clogs stopped, resumed, stopped again, and she knew before the sound reached her ear that Vivian had been walked past the open office door on purpose, past the pearls coiled on the desk, past the lamp still burning on the false document, so that the last thing the woman would see with her name on it was the trap she had built for someone else. The clogs walked on. A latch turned. The study door closed a second time, and this time it stayed closed. She kept polishing. Fork 23 took 6 seconds. Fork 24 took 6 seconds. The rhythm was the only steady thing left in the house. At 2:15, the pantry phone rang once, was picked up, and the head housekeeper's voice came through the swinging door in a whisper Brooke was not meant to hear. Something about ice. Something about the study needing water. The housekeeper crossed the dining room without looking sideways, and for the first time in 8 days, she moved as if the floor beneath Brooke's feet belonged to Brooke. Dae-jin came through the archway at 2:22. His earpiece was live. The scar above his right brow had a fresh sheen of sweat on it that meant he had been standing over someone. "She talked," he said. "Which one?" "Both. The young one first, the old one after she saw what the young one gave us." Brooke set fork 25 in the row. Names. Kang Tae-woo, Snowwolf. She has been on his ledger for 4 years. Every second Tuesday. Cash. Envelope through a laundry drop on 32nd. He paid for the mother of her grandson to have a private room in a Bergen County home. He owns the room. There it was, the name that had been sitting in the 2 silent seconds of the tape all afternoon, unspoken across 3 parts of one long day, laid down on the sideboard between them, as flat as any other fact. Snowwolf, not a rumor anymore, a landlord. And Haewon, bought last winter. Gambling debt in Flushing, 9,000. He cleared it in 1 wire, and gave her 3,000 more for the first favor. She never did a favor before today. Today was the first. So she was cheap. She was cheap. Brooke picked up fork 26. The documents. Copy is in a black sedan on the West Side Highway going south. Real page is in the safe where it never left. He will call the meeting for tomorrow before he opens the envelope. When he opens it, he will see 1 wrong digit and know we knew. He will not know from whom. Dae-jin paused. He will assume the cook, and the cook will be gone from this house before he can ask her a question. That is the master's order. She glanced up for the first time. Gone where? That is not information you carry out of this room. She accepted that with a single nod. There were lines she had already decided not to cross, and this one was on his side of the door. She would not ask again. The tape. In his hand upstairs. The girl. Dae-jin's mouth did a thing that on a softer face would have been a smile. The girl is sitting in the kitchen, making rice for the staff dinner. She has not spoken since she gave me the cassette. Nobody has told her yet that she saved her own life. Then somebody should tell her. He said you would say that. He said correctly. Dae-jin's chin dropped a 1/4 of an inch. 5 o'clock, library. He said to remind you. He said to say, the door will be open, and you will pick the chair. I always pick the chair. He knows. Dae-jin left through the same archway. Brooke polished forks 27, 28, 29. Somewhere between 28 and 29, the muscle at the base of her thumb finally started to shake. and she pressed the fork flat against the felt until the tremor stopped, because a shaking hand on silver was a hand that dropped silver, and dropped silver was a sound the whole house heard. At 3, she walked to the kitchen without being asked. Min So was at the rice cooker, 2 cups washed, drained, measured. Her hands were doing the work of hands that had done it 1,000 times and did not know what else to do with themselves. Her uniform was still gray. Her ponytail was still low. She had not looked up when Brooke came in, and she did not look up now. Brooke leaned her hip against the steel counter opposite the cooker and folded her arms so that Min So could see the shape of them at the edge of her vision. "You saved a life today," Brooke said, in a voice pitched for one person only. "It was not mine. It was yours. Understand that first, before anybody else tells you a different version." Min So's fingers stopped on the switch of the cooker. She did not press it. She did not move it. "You have 4 years in this house. You have a mother somewhere and probably a brother. Chief Choi will make sure both of them keep eating." The switch went down. Steam started under the lid. "Look at me." Min So looked up. Her eyes were dry, which was worse than crying, and the pouch of skin under each one was the color of a bruise that had been living there for days. "You are not staying in this kitchen after tonight. You know that." "I know." When they ask you why, you say nothing. You do not say his name. You do not say her name. You do not say my name. Nod. She nodded. "Good. Rice smells right. Turn the heat down in 6 minutes." Brooke walked back to the dining room and picked up fork 30. The bandeja was more than 2/3 finished, and the sunlight through the west windows had shifted a full pane to the left since morning. At 4:15, a footman she had never seen before crossed the dining room carrying a folder wrapped in plain brown paper, tied with kitchen twine, the way old files were carried before staff learned to trust envelopes. He carried it up the front stairs. He did not stop. He was not the kind of footman who stopped. Delilah Bennett's name was in that paper. Brooke did not need to see the cover to know. She had felt the file coming for 6 hours the way a shoreline feels a tide, and now the tide was in the house, and climbing the front stair, and being laid on a desk where a Korean man with a dragon under his collar would sit alone and read what a black woman named Delilah had done for his family, years before her daughter had ever seen the inside of a mansion. Brooke polished fork 31. She would not ask about the file at 5. She would let him bring it up if he brought it up. If he handed it to her, she would put it back on the table between them and tell him to keep his mother's stories on his side of the table until the rest of the account was clear. At 4:50, she washed her hands in the pantry sink. The soap was almond. The towel was linen. She did both slowly, the way a person does a thing when the next room is the one that decides whether the day was worth walking through. The library was on the first floor, north side, 1 wall of leaded windows, 3 walls of books to the ceiling. Ji-hoon was already inside when she came through the door, standing at the far window with his back to her, hands loose at his sides. White shirt, collar open, sleeves rolled to the forearm, no jacket. The dragon showed at the side of his neck where the collar fell away, and she saw for the first time in daylight that the head of it sat exactly on the muscle that ran from ear to shoulder, so that when he swallowed, the dragon swallowed with him. She chose the chair in the corner, the one with the reading lamp and the small side table, the one that put her back to a solid wall and gave her both the door and the window without turning her head. He turned. He did not sit down. He walked to the chair opposite hers and stood behind it with his hands on the top rail. "Everything," she said. "You said everything. May I sit?" "You may sit." He sat. 3 weeks ago, a man in one of my import offices was found with an unsigned check for $11,000 and a note that said the amount would double if the black girl in the 7th room on the 3rd floor of my house appeared in a photograph with me before the end of the month. There was no black girl in the 7th room on the 3rd floor. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was that the note had been written by a woman. Vivian. The paper was hers, the pen was hers, the handwriting was disguised, but the way she loops the "gi" is not something a person can hide. I have watched her write kitchen orders every Sunday morning for 11 years. So you started looking for the girl before there was a girl. I asked the agency for the next hire. I asked for a Black American woman. I asked for one who would not have family close. I asked because the trap needed a face that matched Vivian's frame, and I wanted to control which face. Brooke's spine straightened a quarter inch and stayed there. You picked me. The agency picked you. I asked for a shape. You are what came through the door. That is not better. I did not say it was better. I said it was true. She let the silence sit until it had weight, and then she moved on to the next thing. The name in the note. The note did not have a name for the man behind it. It had an initial, K. I have known Kang Tae-woo since I was 19. He has wanted a way inside this house for 12 years. He does not care about the accounts. He cares about the fact that my father chose me. He wants a photograph he can pass around a room. A black girl in a robe at your bathroom door. A black girl in a robe at my bathroom door. Yes. And you let him build it. I let him carry the wood in. I let him nail the frame. I did not let him hang the picture. She said nothing. When you named the tampered lock in the mirror on the first night, I understood two things I had not understood 1 hour earlier. The trap was farther along than I had thought, and the woman inside the trap was not going to be its victim. He set his hands flat on his knees. I still let 3 days go past. On day 4, I moved the safe pages. On day 5, I put a man in the housekeeper's closet. On day 6, I gave Minso the recorder. On day 7, you were on your knees in a corridor, because I had not yet decided what a photograph would cost me if it left the house. It would have cost you nothing. It would have cost you your name in every room in this city for the rest of your life. That is my cost, not yours. I know, and you still let me pay a piece of it. Yes. She waited. He waited with her. The reading lamp beside her elbow made a small tick that a colder room would not have carried. There is a folder on your desk upstairs, she said. Yes. Do not bring it into this conversation. I was not going to. Good. Now tell me about tonight. You leave at 6:30. The gate is yours. There is no man on the gate who is not already on your side. The bus at 7 runs. The apartment in Queens will not be watched. If it is watched, it will be watched by mine, not by his. And mine will not step inside a stairwell unless you open the door for them yourself. He paused. Vivian leaves this house at 7. She will not appear at any address you have ever slept at. Hae-won leaves at 7:15. That one I will not describe. Fine. Snow Wolf will hear tomorrow morning that his cook is gone and his page is wrong. He will make a call. He will not make a visit. He does not visit. And me. You leave. You keep leaving. You go where the story you did not become cannot reach you. When you want to speak again, you speak. When you do not, the phone in your kitchen does not ring. That is not enough. Tell me what is enough. An honest apartment in my own name, first and last from me, not from you. A door I chose. A key that does not fit any lock in this house. And a promise from the man across this table that when I open that door to him one day, if I do, he comes with nothing under his arm and nobody behind him. Agreed. Say the whole sentence. When you open that door to me, I come with nothing under my arm and nobody behind me. Agreed. She stood. He stood, a half second after her, because he had learned, somewhere between the corridor and the library, not to be the first person on his feet in a room with her. One more thing, he said. Say it. There is a woman in the main hall tomorrow morning who is going to want to speak to the staff before the staff scatters. Who? You. I am not staff tomorrow morning. That is the reason. She looked at him for a beat, and then past him at the row of book spines that made the wall behind his head, and something in her chest that had been held tight for 8 days, loosened by exactly one turn of a screw. 9, she said. Main hall. Everyone on the floor. Vivian in the room. The apron I take off tomorrow, I take off in front of them, not in front of you. Understood. Understood. She walked past him to the library door. At the door, she stopped without turning. The folder on your desk. Yes. Do not read it tonight. He was quiet for 2 breaths. Why? Because if you read it tonight, you will come to the gate at 6:30 with a story in your mouth, and I have not decided yet whether I want that story from you or from her handwriting. Wait for me to tell you which. I will wait. She left the library and did not look back through the open door. In the corridor, the head housekeeper stepped aside without needing to be asked. In the staff hall, her locker held the small duffel she had packed at lunch and the folded coat she had left on top of it. She changed out of the black uniform in her room with the door bolted and the flower resting on the pillow, and she folded the dress and the apron and the white cuffs and set them on the narrow bed the way a person sets down a tool she may or may not pick up again. She kept the flower, she kept the pin, she kept the pearl-broken pin from her locker, and the promise she had extracted in a library, and the 2 silent seconds of a cassette that now had a name attached to them. At 6:20, she walked out of the staff hall in a plain wool coat and jeans, and low boots, and the flower pinned above her right temple, because the flower was hers before the house had ever seen it, and would be hers after. Min So was at the service door with an envelope of cash the master had made her carry as a first honest task. Brooke took it, counted it once, put half back in Min So's palm and closed her fingers around it. For the rice tonight, she said. You made it right. The gate opened at 6:28. It closed behind her at 6:29. The bus at the corner ran at 7, and she was on it at 6:52, and the driver did not look at her twice, because the flower above her ear was the only thing about her that was not designed to disappear. In the study at the back of the mansion, the black folder tied with kitchen twine sat on Ji-hoon's desk under a small brass lamp he had not switched on yet. He sat in his chair with his hands flat on the wood, and he did not open the folder, and he did not switch on the lamp, and the dragon at his collar rose and fell in the quiet, the way any living thing rises and falls when it is waiting for permission to move. The bus set her down 4 blocks from her cousin's building, and Brooke walked the last of it with the duffel light against her hip, the flower still pinned above her right temple, the pin from the broken lock riding warm inside the coin pocket of her jeans. Her cousin buzzed her up without asking questions. There was soup on the stove and a folded quilt on the couch. Brooke ate 2 spoons, washed her own bowl, and lay down in the dark with her boots by the door, laced. She slept in pieces of 40 minutes. Twice she woke and touched the flower to be sure of it. Once she sat up and listened to the radiator tick and thought, not about him, but about the shape of the morning she had promised herself. 9 o'clock, main hall, apron off in front of the staff, not in front of him. That was the line she had drawn, and lines drawn at night have to hold at daylight, or they were never lines. At 5:30, she was in her cousin's kitchen with the kettle on. She braided the front of her hair back from her temple, so the flower sat higher and more visible. She pressed the black dress and the frilled white apron flat on the ironing board her cousin kept behind the door, and knotted the apron ribbons at the small of her back twice, the way she had knotted them every morning for 7 days. This time, the second knot was the last one that would ever be there. She wore a coat over the uniform on the street. Nobody on the sidewalk needed to see the frill. She caught the 7:15 bus back across the river, with the duffel between her ankles and the pin in her pocket, and her hands folded quiet in her lap. The driver did not look at her twice. That was the second morning in a row he did not, and she counted it as a small mercy. At 8:50, she was at the service gate. Da-jin was on the other side of it, in a charcoal suit, hands clasped low, earpiece dark. He did not open the gate for her. He waited for her to reach up and press the button on the post herself. When it opened, he stepped back 1 full pace and let her walk in on her own feet, not escorted, and she noted the courtesy the way she noted the pin. Ma'am. Chief. He is in the library. He'll wait. She went in through the staff hall, hung the coat on the hook that had been hers for a week, and walked out into the main hall at 3 minutes to 9. The staff was already there. The 2 sink girls at the north wall with their aprons pressed. The 3 groundsmen with caps against their chests. The head housekeeper 1 step forward of the line, hands folded in front of her waist, for the first time Brooke had ever seen. Min So at the far end, eyes level now, not on the floor, and, at the center of the far wall, in a straight-backed chair placed there for that purpose, Vivian Holloway, no chef jacket, a plain gray blouse, hands in her lap, a man of day gins standing behind the chair, one hand on the seat back, not on her. She was not tied. She did not need to be. The room did the tying. Ji-hoon came in through the north corridor at 9 exactly. Black suit, white shirt, no tie. He did not walk toward Brooke. He walked to the wall between the 2 staircases and stopped there, 1 pace back, 1 pace to the side, so that when the room looked at the center of the hall, it looked at her. He kept his hands where everyone could see them. Brooke did not speak first. She let the silence take a full breath. "Good morning. Good morning, Miss Bennet," the head housekeeper said, and the rest of them answered in a low, ragged chorus a beat behind. "I asked Mr. Seo for this room and this hour," Brooke said. He agreed. "What I have to say is short." Nobody moved. "For 7 days I worked in this house. On the 8th day, a story was written about me before I finished breakfast. Yesterday that story was answered. The answer stands. You heard it in this hall at 2. You will not hear a second version from anyone with a mouth in this building. If you do, you take it to Mr. Seo. 18. She let a beat pass. "That was yesterday's business. This is today's." She turned a half step so the line of her body faced Ji-hoon and the line of her voice faced the staff, and the room read the geometry without being told. "Mr. Seo," she said, without looking at him, "made an offer last night that I am accepting on my terms. An apartment in my name. First and last from my account. A door whose key does not fit any lock in this house. He agreed to those terms in a room without witnesses. I am repeating them now with witnesses, so that no one in this room can ever tell me later that I was kept." Ji-hoon inclined his head once. That was his witness. "I am not staff of this house as of this minute," she said. "I will not be paid for today. I will not accept a car. I will walk out through the same gate I walked in through, on the sidewalk, and I will take the bus." She walked, then, 9 even steps to the long dark table in the center of the hall. The head housekeeper's eyes tracked her the way you track a candle across a room. Brooke stopped at the table, laid both palms flat on the wood for 1 held second, and then reached behind her back with both hands and untied the double knot of the white apron. It came apart clean. She lifted the apron over her head without disturbing the flower, folded it once against her chest, folded it again against the tabletop, and set it down in the exact center of the wood, ribbons squared, frill facing the north stair. "My professional relationship with this house ends now." Something in the room let go that had been held for 11 years. The head housekeeper's shoulders dropped an inch. One of the sink girls put a hand over her mouth. Min-so's chin lifted the smallest bit, and Brooke saw it and did not turn her head to acknowledge it. That was for later, if there was a later. Ji-hoon took 1 step forward off the wall, not toward Brooke, toward the room. "If Miss Bennet leaves this house on any terms other than her own," he said, and his voice carried without lift, "no one in this hall keeps their post. You have my word on that in front of her. If any of you cannot live with that word, come to my office by noon and I will release you today with a full month." Nobody moved. He turned his head, and only his head, to Vivian. Vivian looked at the folded apron on the table. She looked at Brooke's hands, which were empty. She looked at the flower above the right temple and, for 1 flat second, at the small dark beauty mark near the upper corner of Brooke's mouth. Then she looked down at her own hands in her lap and kept them there. "Ma'am," Brooke said to her, gentle in the way a knife is gentle when it is set down, "you do not have to say anything to me. I am not asking. I am telling you that when Mr. CO asks you what happened this morning in the main hall, you will tell him that the girl you tried to sell into a photograph walked out on her own 2 feet, in the uniform of a woman who was never yours to sell, and left the apron on the table. That is what you will tell him, because that is what happened. Vivian's mouth opened once, closed. Her hands stayed in her lap. Brooke turned back to the room. Thank you for standing in this hall with me. You did not have to. I saw who came. She walked past the table, past the apron folded square in the center of the wood, past Ji-hoon at the wall, and out through the north corridor to the service hall on her own. Nobody followed. That was the point. The head housekeeper stepped aside with her hands still folded, and the 2 sink girls parted for her, and Min-so, at the end of the line, met her eyes for 1 whole second as she passed, and Brooke let her have that second, and did not stop. At the service gate, Dae-jin was in the same place he had been at 9. He did not open it. She pressed the button. It slid open. She walked through. Ma'am, he said behind her. Chief. He asked me to tell you the folder is on the desk in the study. He did not open it. She kept her back to him. Tell him I know. Ma'am. She walked the 4 blocks to the bus stop with the coat over her arm, and the flower above her right temple, and the double knot of the apron gone from the small of her back for the first morning in 7, and by the time the 8:45 to Queens pulled up, she was breathing at her own pace, and the pin in her pocket was warm from her hand. Her cousin's apartment was empty when she got back. There was a note on the counter, key on the hook, milk in the fridge, love, Naima. Brooke drank a glass of water standing at the sink, and then she sat on the edge of the couch and cried once, quiet, into the crook of her elbow, for about 90 seconds. Then she got up, washed her face, and started making calls about a lease. The apartment she found was on the 2nd floor of a walk-up on a quiet block in Astoria, 1 bedroom, honest windows, a fire escape that overlooked a schoolyard. She signed her own name on the lease on a Thursday. She paid first and last from her own account. The landlord handed her the key in a small paper envelope, and she put it on her own ring, next to her cousin's spare, and walked out onto the sidewalk and stood on it for a long minute before she went to buy a mattress. 11 days after the morning in the main hall, at 6:20 in the evening, the buzzer in her new apartment rang once. She was at the stove. She had a pot of rice going, and a small pan with green onion and egg. The flower was on the windowsill in a glass of water, petals wide open under the kitchen light. She was in jeans and a soft gray t-shirt, sleeves pushed up, hair loose and thick down her back for the first time in weeks. No apron, no uniform, feet bare on cool wood. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and went to the intercom. Yes? It is me. She pressed the buzzer without answering, and unlocked the door, and left it on the chain for the count of 10, and then took the chain off, and opened it 2 inches, and stepped back to the middle of the kitchen, and waited. He came in alone. Black slacks, white shirt, open at the collar, sleeves rolled once at the forearm, no jacket, no tie, nothing under his arm except a small dark folder tied with kitchen string, held loose in his right hand, not clutched. Nobody behind him in the hallway. She checked. He let her check. He did not move from the doormat until she had. Come in. He came in. He closed the door behind him quietly, and set the folder on the small round table by the window, and stepped back 1 full pace from it, so that the folder was hers to reach for or not. The dragon showed clean at the open collar, black ink rising from the shirt line to the base of his neck on the left. She had not seen it in daylight since the library. She looked at it once, on purpose, and then she looked at his face. You came with nothing under your arm, she said, and nobody behind you. As agreed. That is my folder. It is. You did not read it. I did not. She walked to the table. She untied the kitchen string, which was the same string that had tied the apron ribbons of every cook in every house she had ever worked in, and she set the string beside the folder and opened it. The first page was her mother's name at the top in a clean black hand. Delilah Bennett. Under it, a date 31 years old. Under that, a photograph clipped to the paper with a small brass clip. Her mother at 40, in the deep burgundy Sunday dress, pearl studs, hands folded on her lap, on a porch Brooke half remembered from a summer in South Carolina. The kind, steady eyes. The silver at the temple that had not yet reached the crown. Under the photograph, a letter in her mother's handwriting, addressed to a man Brooke did not know by name, dated 4 years before Brooke was born. She read the first line. She read the second. She sat down in the chair by the table because her knees decided for her. The letter was short. Her mother had, on a summer night in a Charleston hospital where she worked as a floor nurse, put her body between a boy in a room and a man in a corridor who had come to finish him. She had not known who the boy was. She had known he was 17 and bleeding and alone, and she had known the man in the corridor had a gun under his coat and did not belong on her floor, and she had walked out into the corridor with a clipboard and a nurse's voice and told the man that the police were 3 minutes out because she had already called them, which was true because she had called them from the phone at the nurse's station before she came out. The man had left. The boy had lived. The boy had been the younger brother of a Seo. The rest of the folder was the promise, written on Seo family paper, in a hand that was not Jihoon's. In a year, Jihoon had been a child. Silent, lifelong protection of Delilah Bennett and any child of her body, without her knowledge, without a debt, without a name attached, for as long as the Seo family existed under that name. It was signed. It was dated. It had been honored, quietly, in ways Brooke would find later on other pages, in a scholarship her mother had never understood the source of, in a hospital bill that had come back marked paid the year Brooke was 11, in the fact that no one had ever, in any of the neighborhoods her mother had lived in, ever touched her. Brooke read all of it. It took a long time. Jihoon stood by the door, 3 paces off, hands at his sides, and did not speak, and did not sit, and did not look away, and did not come closer. When she was done, she closed the folder gently and laid her hand flat on top of it, the way she had laid her hands on the table in the main hall. The tears were already on her face. She had not made a sound. "My mother never told me," she said. She did not know either. She should have known. Yes. She wiped her cheek with the heel of her hand. "You knew before I walked into your house. I knew the name. I did not know the face. I asked the agency because of the letter. I did not tell you because I did not want you to be grateful. Gratitude is a leash. I did not want you on a leash in my house. And a photograph in a bathroom is not a leash. No, it is a noose. I know the difference. That is why I stopped it." She was quiet a long time. The pot on the stove had gone to a low simmer she could hear from the table. He heard it too. He did not move. "Come here." He came. 2 steps. He stopped in front of her chair, hands at his sides. He was tall enough that she had to lift her face to look at him, and she did, without standing up, and she looked at him for as long as she needed to look, and then she reached up with both hands, slow, palms open, and set them on the sides of his face. His jaw was warm, his eyes closed for one whole breath. "You will sit down at that table," she said, "and you will eat with me, because I made rice, and there is enough. And after that, you will go home the same way you came in, on your own 2 feet, alone, with nothing in your hand. And the next time I open this door to you, it will be because I opened it. Yes." She drew his face down and she kissed him, once, softly, on the mouth, in her own kitchen, with no mirror between them, and no door half open behind her, and no camera in the corner, and no man in a closet 3 floors down. She kissed him the way a woman kisses a man who has finally understood that she was never his to fetch, and she felt him understand it under her hands. Then she let go, and she stood up, and she went to the stove and turned the heat down, and she set 2 bowls on the small round table beside the folder, and she folded a napkin at each place, and she did not, that evening, put the flower back in her hair. It stayed on the windowsill in the glass of water, wide open under the light, and it was the last thing she looked at before she sat down across from him and picked up her spoon. Mark my words, K-fam. Some women do not leave the house of a rich man. Some women make the rich man leave the house of the woman he was going to buy. That one walked out, on her own 2 feet, in her own name, and she never wore that apron again. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Tell me, K-fam, have you ever worn a uniform in a house that treated you like you were invisible, while quietly knowing more truth than everyone at that table? Have you ever been framed for something you did not do, and stayed calm because your dignity was worth more than their applause? Would you have taken off the apron the way Brooke did? Mark my words, K-fam. Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, hidden legacy, and silent protection, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.